Welcome everyone to Dynasty the Podcast Show. I am your host, Ira Thomas Bush the Fourth, and we have another edition of the episode. I just want to say thank y'all for tuning in and listening. And this today is part Boss Talk Part 2. Sorry about the noise in the background. We have to do it in the open space today. You know, y'all know how it goes. People want to. I've been here. I've been putting in my stats, and then it get a little hectic sometimes. So everybody got to put their time in. I ain't worried. I ain't mad. It is what it is. Now today is not. Today I'm not going to do too much political talk, but I will start off on the political side. They didn't have anything going on for. I don't know why they said it will be. It's pretty. It's probably something going on. Definitely in DC for Energy Week or whatever they had going on the top floor, but they didn't have one here, and that's okay. I got gist of it. I went down to the senators, buildings, and there were no hearings. They shut it down for the rest of the week. I ain't saying I did anything special, but I know people have to, be on point with what's going on in the world, and they can't out here do all this treasonous activity towards we the people. They got to get their stuff together. They can't be out here just putting out information or misleading the people. So we trying to get things in order. I came down here. I know my assignment and my purpose on earth. I know how disrespectful they was towards my family, like I speak on all the time. But we're gonna have some fun today. The first thing, just want to say, shout out to my family, my mother, my grandparents, my child, my niece and nephew. They like my children as well. I want nothing for the best. I want the light filled and have joyous and adventurous days and be safe while they doing it and enjoying their time. That being said, we're gonna start right off the top. We're gonna go right into the executive order. There's two of them I didn't read. The first one is accelerating the medical treatments for serious mental illness. Now, before I read this, I want to describe. I want y'all to understand. When I was younger, mental illness was ESE, ESOL. People being born with autism or anything like that. It's sometimes they developed all these medicines. A lot of stuff is undeveloped. A lot of stuff is they want things that are trending. But mental illness is not a trending thing. When we have wars, when you have people that are in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Gulf War, the September 9/11 events, the mass shootings that happen in schools, all these things are things that are, we call mental illness that can affect people with mental illness. Having a death in the family, all these things cause mental illness. Getting hit too hard when you're playing the sports, getting hit, as far as football, hit with a baseball, anything like that, 100 mile per hour, all this trauma that can happen to your mind, being, have somebody shoot a gun at you, all these things that happen. People don't know how, certain people are supposed to be in the wrong. Certain people are in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's unfortunate. I could speak on things that have happened to my family members. Unfortunately, things I've been pretty solid on my end, but it's I don't like the way things have happened to my family. It's like this. People get positioned and people start being jealous and people start feeling like they're supposed to be entitled to the things that you acquired or you've been able to gain. And I don't like that type of energy. I'm trying my best to the trajectory of my family is pretty great, and I'm trying to keep that train the train on the tracks as far as my family. Then I'm trying to put it out as examples and do my assignment as well. It's not tough, but you gotta be tough in these situations and be tough when you making decisions. So we're not gonna keep it that. We're gonna read the executive order. Section 1, Purpose and Policy. Policymakers and the medical field have long struggled to address the burden of suicide and serious mental illness rates in America. Today, over 14 million American adults have serious mental illness, defined as having this noble mental and behavior and emotional disorder that substantially interferes with the person's life and abilities and to function. About 8 million are on prescription medications for the conditions. Suicide rates tragically increased by 37% from 2000 to 2018 during my first term. This is the person that is supposedly in command of the United States right now. That's his position that he was voted into. We made historic progress in helping those struggling with some of those most insidious mental illness, and suicide rates decreased by 5% from 2018 to 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic and the Biden administration prolonged the shutdown, stunted this progress, and suicide rates rebounded upwards again to their peak of 2022. Critically, veterans often suffer in greater measures from this tragedy. For over 20 years, there have been more than 6,000 veteran suicides per year, and the current veteran suicide rate is more than twice as much as non-veteran adult population. This is the stuff that I was speaking on right out the gate. I'm just happy. My mother's father, he just recently ascended. My father's father is still here, and I know he's mentally both are pretty strong men, mentally and physically, and I appreciate both of them. I don't like the fact that it's the respect that's going on about certain veterans walking around and not doing their just due for the other men's, and it's based off colorization, and this stuff is a lot of these numbers are fudged because they don't check on the right people, and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, and that's being said, I'm gonna move on. And the individuals suffering from major depressive disorder and substance abuse disorder, among other serious mental illness, can relapse and not fully respond to standard medical and psychiatric therapies despite massive and federal investments into research and potential advancements in mental health care and treatment, and medical research system has yet to produce and improve therapies and promote enduring improvements in mental health conditions. And those are the most complex patients. Innovative and methods are indeed to find long-term solutions for those Americans beyond exciting prescription medications. Psychedelic drugs, including ibogaine compounds, show potential clinical studies to address serious mental illness for patients whose conditions persist of completing standard therapy. Indeed, Food and Drug Administration has granted breakthrough therapy designation to specific psychedelic drugs, and there are numerous products currently in the clinical trial pipeline for review. Safety and efficiency, it is the policy of the administration to accelerate innovative research models and appropriate drug approval, increase access to psychedelic drugs that could save lives and reverse crisis and serious mental illness in America. Now, I don't know what they trying to do, but that sounds like some money grab. People don't understand that medication is not the way. It's mostly about, you know, feeling comfort. When you're younger, you have these moments, before you get involved in these wars or you get involved in narcotics, and they trying to kind of, they say psychedelic drugs. That's very unspecific. What they talking about, mushrooms or marijuana? They've been messing with so much things going on with those type of things. This stuff comes from the ground, and they, like I was speaking on, in my previous shows, they tend to, when people have ways to help your brain and help the flow of your blood, and these people that have naturally cured things such as AIDS and all these extra STDs, they kill people like that. They go out and they assassinate these people, and they blame it on something completely different, and they try to cover it up. And that's what America is. It's been documented that they've done this several times. So that people might call it what do you call it, being having not having a truth, that not being true. But I'm in a community that is black, and it's urban, and this stuff happens right in front of me. People get harassed for being the color of their skin and being intelligent and being powerful, and that's what the way it is. They attack children, they attack women, and I'm not all for this. So this bill specifically, I like what they talking about, in the beginning, but the end, they lost me with this breakthrough therapy designated specific for psychedelic. Nah, that's not the way. People already been doing that. Y'all trying to come up with ways to put something in the lab, and that's not how it is. This is natural. Y'all be probably going to places that y'all ain't supposed to be going, tearing down forests and looking for certain things and all kind of gimmicks y'all trying to pull out at the end where people been telling y'all to, go the natural route. Make sure y'all not putting y'all hand. Food and Drug Administration does not have need to put their hand in that pot. They need to let people be great at what they do, and they need to cheer them on from the side and actually put actually put money in towards that instead of trying to go in and completely take over something and put it as a lab or mass product something that doesn't need to be mass produced. You can't speed up natural. You cannot speed that up, and that's what it sounds like in this executive order. So I'm gonna say no on this executive order. I know things got to go through the law, and it gets bigger when they try to do acts and laws, and I'm not going for it. People already been working on this stuff since, and I'm a '90s baby, so I've seen people get killed that are famous for these types of things, and I'm just gonna put it out like that in the air. And we're gonna move on. We're gonna read the next one. Continuing the suspension and duty-free minimizes treatment of all countries. Okay, let's read that. Let's see what they're talking about. Continue the suspensions of duty-free minimize treatment for all countries. Okay, this is not a long one. It's just referencing an executive order. Republication. Executive Order 14388 was originally published on pages 9433 through 9436. In this issue of Wednesday, February 25th, 26, in the publication, the document did not include occupying annex. The current document is republished in its entirety in accompanying annex. So let's read Executive 14388. Continuing the suspension. So this was in several executive orders, including 143, imposing duties to address the flow of illicit drugs across the northern border. And mid, they put several executive orders out on these countries, address the southern border, um, the synthetic opioid supply chain in People's Republic of China, regulating imports with reciprocal tariffs to rectify trade practices and contribute large persistent annual United States good and trade deficits, and amid the executive order 14324. So basically this is they put a bunch of executive orders telling people that no drugs allowed across the border. They're trying to figure out, they're trying to get money out of these things, and they trying to put shackles on, freedom of move around. I'm not, like I told y'all, I'm not the one to support any kind of narcotic trafficking. I don't have no deals in that. I know what America was formed on, and I'm not naive, so I'm not finna act like these people don't have their hands dirty. And there's the big old articles of all kind of crazy parties with alcohol and drugs around. These people are the ones trying to sign off on stuff like this. I'm not that naive. Like I told you, I'm born in '91. I don't want people to sound hypocritical. It looks embarrassing to the country, but I'm all for cleaning it up. If it was personally towards me. They're including the Trade Act of 1974 and all this gimmicky stuff like that wasn't important, and then they got it all tied in with something new and unproductive. So, they're being very, very petty and very, very selfish in some of this stuff that I'm reading out for these executive orders. So it's like throwing, being caught in the middle of bull crap. When one thing's not bull crap, there's 1,000 other things that are. And you trying to put it in like it's something important, but it's not. You're calling it a National Emergencies Act and all this, and it's all about Emergency Economic Powers Act. We're making it up as we go. So things got to get organized over there in the judiciary side, where these judges are not paid off or brought off, and they're not selling out the masses of people for a specific light. And that's all I'm gonna say for today. Those are the two executive orders that I'm gonna go. We're gonna go right now because today is a big, huge day for a lot of young men. They're gonna change the lives of their family. You got the NFL draft first round. I was gonna speak on it. I'm not gonna speak too much on the prospects because I'm not happy about how some of my people that I'm close, that I won't call them close like that, but I reiterate, I wanted them to be successful. I started them for being, exceptional athletes and exceptional students. And, I didn't like how the process of them going to college was treated. They stopping the rail. I definitely know one, if not both, were heavily involved in them stopping the rail because of the influence they have on people and, and the ties they actually have in the rail. I don't like, and then it's more than just, it's just a group of how it is. People are already in NFL, people are already in NBA, people still in college, they still successful. They got through the storm, and all that good stuff. Some of their partners didn't make it to the exact where they wanted to be, but everybody made it out, and it's going to continue to be strong, and it's going to continue to grow. Now, that being said, I'm going to break down my top 5 teams that can gain from the draft. And, I'm just gonna do a little quick spiel on each team. This is the teams that I think the draft can help them, and some of the suggestions that I think I can, I'm gonna suggest to them that they can happen. Some scenarios, or I don't even know all the. I tried my best because when I break it down, I was so disappointed that they dropped it the last two because I'm bad. I don't miss on guard. I don't miss on O lineman, and D lineman. It's all about that. I always talk about this. It's all about they want to be great. A lot of these guys have abilities, but when you're playing defensive line, you got to have that motor to not stop and to continue to fight because those guys on the opposite side are coached up. They're professionals as well. They're on offense. They're usually on the attack. They know the play before you do. So you got to have that want to win, that want to be defense, that to be the greatest defense of lineman that you can be every play. You can't take plays off. So I'm both sides. I coach both sides in the prep realm, and I teach. I'm pretty solid and being technically sound on both ends, and I'm mad that they did not pick them 2 tackles. It was on full display, so I'm happy that happened to that tackle for the number 66 for the he only get a number, he don't get a last name no more. Number 66 for the Patriots, or number 67, I can't remember his number no more either. 66, whatever, he got ruled, and he was the main reason why they lost the Super Bowl to the Seattle. He gave us so many sacks and pressures. It was embarrassing. He should not have got picked first. He should not have been the first tackle pick. And I'm not going to talk about the rule. We're going to move on, and we're going to break down the teams. Now, the first team I'm going to talk about is the Ravens. I think this team, they had the 14th pick. Their quarterback was hurt. Lamar Jackson was hurt a lot of games last year, and unfortunately they actually got a nice. I don't know if did they make the playoffs. They might have made it and they lost in the playoffs, but they have the 14th pick. And I didn't go through the prospects this year. My time wasn't used on that this year. I didn't feel like putting my time in. But what they need is defensive tackle depth, and I feel like they need a combo with that pick. I think they should pick a combo tackle guard type player. I think he should have the athleticism of a tackle and play guard, so it could solidify. Lamar not having no issues, or you could put out that extra tackle out there, so you could be strong on your in your run game. Also, they need to fill the loss of Isaiah Likely, who went to the Giants. I did not like that they did not re-sign him. That was one of the worst. That could come back and be one of the worst non-signees in NFL history, because I think that was going to put them over the hump. He got better every year. And he came out of when he came out in college, he was only looked out as mostly a wide receiver type tight end, but he developed nicely last year as a blocker. He had great seal blocks. He did well with his footwork. I didn't understand why they didn't re-sign him. He definitely should have been the next guy up after Andrews if he plays. He should have been signed, and then Andrews should have been traded or to a championship type team. I know Ravens treat their players, loyalty, and Andrews was a big, he's a big part of the tradition of the loyalty of the Ravens. But you drafted that guy too, and he's talented. He developed. He didn't have no issue to me when he was in the game. I don't know if it was, he messed up on, actually, you like what's this play or what are they talking about? I don't know if it was some petty stuff like he had to develop like that. But overall, being in the right packages, being in the right position to score and win, he's been like that his whole career. So I was upset about them losing that. I think that's a big weapon loss for Lamar. They're gonna have to replace that. Also, I think they're what they need to address. I don't think it's gonna happen all in one night, but they need to have a true fullback that can catch out of the backfield. One of these guys. I always talk about one of the best examples is Mike Allstott, him playing fullback and H back for the Bucks, and him being a great blocker, a lead blocker. And it's been rare that we have them type of fullback, but they need to find Lamar fullback like that. They need to load it up. They need to gain that guard tackle combo that can play both. That's powerful in the run game and that's athletic enough to set that pocket for Lamar. And I talk about that fullback play and that tight end play. That's very important to me for Lamar. This him being an athletic quarterback, him developing as a passer, and him taking the next step. Now the last move, I think they need to trade. I think they need to trade. And the team that I'm telling, I put it in the San Francisco because that's one of the teams I want to break down. Who has a chance to win the championship or the early dark horse, just by drafting and changing a little bit in the game. Rashad Bateman, I don't think he's not a great fit for the team. I think Zay Flowers got 20. He's going to earn 27 million. They gotta pay him again. I think he's the number one Z in the league, top three for sure. That's the top number two wide receiver in the league. He's explosive. He had a little setback with injuries, but he's still explosive. When he's in the game, he doesn't take plays off. He's sure-handed. He catches touchdown passes. And I think opening that up for him, so he's not worried about looking over his shoulder, trying to get in and out or getting the ball. I think they need to trade Bateman for, a third or fourth, trade him, for a third or fourth round type of, basically they need to trade him and in return, they need to get a younger, just somebody who can replace him, put him out at X receiver. If Bateman get traded, he probably worth at least a sixth or seventh round, if not higher. I don't know everybody's grade on him, but I don't think he's not because he's developed okay. But I think there's going to be talented wide receivers that are going to be lanky and long that can stretch the field. That's going to get overlooked because it's athletes everywhere now, and they don't get the respect that they used to get. And it's just based off the league. It's based off them trying to colorize it and put a white face in the first or second, third round, and all that athletic, switching of energies. I talk about it all the time. I think the black players understand what's going on. A lot of them just want to get paid and get an opportunity. That's why they got another league because what they're doing is improper. So I'm just gonna break it down. I know it's a big night. The NFL draft is one of my favorite things to cover. I love watching it. I grew up a fan of football, and breaking down football is one. One of my favorite things to do. So yeah, I ain't saying I don't like Bateman. I just think, and then I think they need to add depth to it and get another third round. Get another running back. I think the biggest splash they can do with them having the 14th pick is to trade that 14th pick and get Jeremiah from Notre Dame. I think that would solidify them winning the championship. that would be the separation. They already got Derrick Henry. It's not to replace him. It's just to solidify something that they're going to be great at, which is running the ball, which is losing Isaiah Likely, which is still baffling to me. Trey Bateman, you can get a young wide receiver, that long play action, old school, and of course they could use a defensive tackle, interior defensive tackle, or a cornerback. Cornerback depth is always good, but I think they could get that stuff via free agent or in the fourth or third round, and they'd be talented as well. So that's it for the Ravens. Now Jacksonville is the second team. I think they should trade Brian Thomas for a Z type speedy wide receiver, and they could get a third or fifth round, then like I said, they get a young guy that's super fast that plays Z, that's that's in the development range, and they could get a third or fifth round pick for Brian Thomas, I believe, and I think that will help them on the offensive side. Also, they don't have a first round pick, so I don't. I think they could get the capital and get better. Still keep get a wide receiver back and get some more depth for add to their roster. Uh, like I said, they need a blocking tight end. I think they need safety help and defensive tackle as well. Like I said that. So tight end, blocking tight end, they need help. They need to help him. That could develop into a passer clearly, and the safety. And yeah, that's about it. Now the Lions is the next team. Now I like the Lions roster. They got Montgomery went to a different team, so it's going to be strictly Jameer Gibbs in the backfield as the star running back. I think it is this time to take over at full time duty. I think they're gonna have to add. What I see they need help in is linebacker, interior linebacker is what they need help. Whoever's the number one interior linebacker, I think they need help on that. Guy that can run sideline to sideline, drop into coverage, perfect. Be well coached when it comes to reading and reacting to running pass. They had some nice cornerbacks. If they do get a cornerback, it will be somebody with tons of speed. They got a lot of length on the outside. They might need somebody on the inside, like a star safety. They could probably get somebody like that in the second or third round. Make sure you got some length if he's a safety. Make sure you got a lot of speed if he's a corner. And because they got length already, that'll go right with their game scheme. He probably could tackle or develop into a tackle if he got size. And Lions is not that far off from winning the championship either. I like the way the thing they might lack is in game adjustments. They probably need to add a coach that's good at in game adjustments. I see they lack that a lot. Not saying coach is not a good as preparation. I feel like that's where they're at now. That's why they at the level they're at now. Jared Goff make sure he stay on his P's and Q's when it comes to preparing and staying on point with his individual practice as far as his footwork, the basics of eye discipline when he's doing play action because he got a big arm, being sound on his quick release, not being sloppy, not doing other things that will jeopardize him as a top tier quarterback. Last year I feel like he was a little loopy and it was a little off. Maybe he was injured, maybe he wasn't focused, and that was during the playoff. They had a nice roster, and then not knowing when to call timeout, when to save time. I think that was a big issue. So that coach that's I ain't calling you that coach. I could say that's one of the things I was great at. Time management because one of my favorite positions is quarterback. So being able to be in position or put your team in position, a head coach that is really what you are an extension of the whole team, and the free safety and the quarterback is your best friend probably if you as far as communication wise. And then I've been around football too long. That's how it goes. You want to have a good rapport with those two players to make sure you controlling the whole time, the time of your 60 minutes. Now, my team is, I got to break down my team that I grew up watching, which is Tampa Bay. I'm definitely not. They got the 15th pick. whoever's the best quarterback available, they need to pick that quarterback. I'm not a fan of I've never been a fan of I can't even remember his name. He wears number 6, Baker Mayfield. I'm not a fan of him at all. What I think they need is if they don't pick Baker Mayfield is the number one tight end. If it's somebody that talented, you know, he could be a 3 down tight end that's definitely a pass catching and blocking tight end if he's that. And you need the defense. You need to be, our defensive end play was not sound, and at the end of the year they started off quick, but they were inconsistent and getting sacks. Even the pressure they was doing all that Wolverine. I call it Wolverine because they go in there with their hands instead of running through the play, the quarterback and completing the play of a sack. They lacking that, and they're gonna need help in the interior with I think David, he's retired. I think it's people ready to step up, but he's still gonna need help. We gotta replace Mike Evans, a future Hall of Famer. Out in wide receiver, we don't have the size anymore that we've been having there for the last 10 plus years. And he will help win the Super Bowl, and he was a number one wide receiver for a long time for that team. Goodwin is gonna have to. I think he's gonna be he's a true Z. He's not as fast as the Z, but he's very physical. He makes very tough catches. He just got to stay healthy. He will be the number one target, and he will be the true Z on the team. And he's at the top. He's definitely a top 5 talent as far as catching and getting touchdowns in the red zone. He's up there. So yeah. And my last one is San Francisco. They need defensive tackle help. They have the depth, but some of them guys haven't planned out. QB, I think they could draft. They could literally trade Purdy or Mac Jones. I'm not a fan of either one. They could trade both. Um, and they need a 3 down back that could stay healthy. I'm not a fan of McCaffrey. He just got that big deal. He's making $25+ million. I don't think he's that good. Wide receiver, I think they could trade Bosa for a 4-eye type of defensive end and some draft capital. Bosa is a little overrated to me. He makes too much money. Brandon Ayuk, same with him. He underperformed. I'm not dissing him in any kind of way. I think he'll be a better fit somewhere else. Um, I don't know. I think what team I would put him in. I think Carolina Panthers could use him. The Bears, not the Bears. The Bears have number 2 wide receiver type. Um, Tank Dell should be back for Houston. Brandon Ayuk, yeah, it's a team out there for him, and I think they could get draft capital. And the trading Bosa, you might get a second round and a solid 4-eye type player to help your scheme to be that run stopper. Because Bosa does not do well in run stopping. Sometimes he get lucky, sometimes he don't be seen in the game. And the effort on defense and pass rush is a little overhyped to me, overrated. So they could add that in the draft. It's a lot of young players coming out, and they have the number 27th pick. So, and you can add a guard or tackle or center with that pick. So, y'all got my takes on it. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm excited and happy for the draft today, and yeah, and I'm gonna watch the basketball games, some baseball games on right now, and it's a good baseball. So I switched it up for y'all. But we're gonna be back to the elite State of the Union will be Saturday, and it's gonna be a good look. We're gonna try to make it informative and worth your while. I don't know what it's gonna be on. I'm not gonna put my State of the Union out yet, but try to stay tuned. We're gonna try to be more detailed than we were last week. It was a little sloppy. I didn't like how came out. It came together at the end. It was probably my worst one. So I want to bounce back. It might be about wildlife. Somebody was talking loud, and it was like, it's wildfires going on in Georgia and Florida. So, I might, they're trying to do this government distraction tactic, and I don't like that. And, we're gonna figure out, we're gonna get some information on that. I didn't know that was going on. And I'm from Florida, and I don't like when stuff going on like that because we've been getting it's been cold weather in DC since I only been gone from that my home area for 2 months. So we're gonna have to see what's going on. That's gonna be it for today. I'm your host, Ira Thomas Bush the Fourth. This is Dynasty the Podcast Show, and I appreciate y'all watching. And y'all, hopefully, y'all come in and listen next episode.